What's going on, everybody? Tyler here with episode number 2 of the Citizens Firemen podcast. Got our guest on here today, Hank Henline. So, introduce yourself, Hank. Tell a little bit about yourself to everybody that hasn't heard about you, your product, ain't ever reached out before.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Hank Henline. I am 35 years old. I've been in fire service for 15 years. I started as a volunteer in Western Maryland, and I currently work in Frederick County, Maryland, as a firefighter on Engine 2 in the city of Frederick. Been working for Frederick for 8 years. I'm also an instructor there when I'm not on shift. I teach a lot at our recruit academy. I work for Capital Fire Training from time to time as well as an instructor with them. And I recently started a company called Hasty Fire Products where I sell a couple of things, but mostly my Hasty Rescue Strap, which is it's a strap that is designed to rescue firefighters. So uh, that's basically it in a nutshell. Quick.
How, working for Frederick, how's your staffing look on your trucks? Like, were you riding engine, I believe?
Yeah. So I'm on an engine. Um, Frederick is it's a really unique dynamic, at least unique kind of for around the country. It seems like the Mid-Atlantic region that I'm in, it's kind of par for the course, but we're technically a combination system. So Frederick County is pretty large. It's a large county, largest county in the state of Maryland, and then Frederick City's right in the middle. So surrounding Frederick City's a bunch of smaller towns and then rural areas as well. So we kind of cover it all. And the majority of the firehouses are actually volunteer corporations, um, and they have career staff in them. Most of them, all but two. And then there's like 3 or 4 stations that are pretty much all career staff. So it's kind of a mix. But as far as the career numbers go, our minimum staffing is 3 on suppression pieces. So that's engines, trucks, and rescues. Um, we had a line of duty death 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. Uh, some of the recommendations to that was to bring our staffing up to 4. So we are currently in a transition phase where um, our apparatus is starting to go from 3 to 4. Uh, my firehouse is one of the first ones implemented, so we have 4 on our engine right now. So right now the trucks in the rescue still has 4. Or, I'm sorry, 3.
Awesome. Where I work at, actually, when I first started, I was riding a 4-man engine, but we've done a little bit of restructuring. Our shift commanders used to ride the engine out of Station 1, and they've since restructured that, changed their position title to battalion chief, so now we run 3-man engine companies. So I feel a little
Gotcha.
bit of what you're coming from there, except we kind of went backwards from it. We went
Yeah.
from 4 to 3, but still didn't really lose much because the officer on that engine was operating in a command role when they got there anyways, compared to more of a company officer position.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. You know how firemen are. Like when something changes, you don't like it, right? And it's not that I don't like it. I've always said we should have 4 on our pieces, but um, it's interesting how good we got and how comfortable we got operating as a 3-man crew. That adding the 4th initially was very strange. It definitely took a little bit of getting used to, like how to operate with each other.
I'd say so. I could see, though, especially for some of the truck and rescue, once they start making 4, I think it'd probably make it a little bit easier for them, some of their tasks,
Oh, for
split the
sure.
crew for vent, search, whatever it may be, to where you've got
Yeah, for sure.
2 and 2 compared to it's kind of hard to split 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll definitely be easier for them.
So, how'd you get into the instructor world? Some with your academy, and especially with the capital.
So it started at the academy. Um, I was approached by, at the time, the lieutenant of training, who is now a captain in our special operations. Um, but I was approached by him, and he had asked if I had any interest in being an instructor, which I told him, yeah, I did. Eventually, I wanted to be one, and he's like, well, let's bring you on now, and we'll start putting you through the stuff. And it's like, I think you would be a pretty good fire instructor. And the whole reason that I wanted to do it from the beginning was our academy is a very strict and military style academy. Now, the actual like academy staff, the people who are assigned there every day, they're more of the hard-nosed people. When I come in as a fire instructor, I'm not supposed to be as hard-nosed as they are. But I remember when I was in recruit school, there was definitely some instructors who used it as a power trip. I can come here every day, I can stroke my ego, and I can scream at these recruits. And they didn't do a good job at actually teaching. They didn't do a good job at um, like passing on a passion for the job, right? Like, so that was kind of my whole goal. I came in with some volunteer experience, so um, I knew what it was about. But there was people in my class that were fresh. They didn't have any experience at all. They didn't know what the fire service was about. And to be trained by people like that, I think is a big disservice. So I wanted to eventually pass on my knowledge and my passion for the job. That's the biggest reason. So um, started with that, went through all my stuff, and then I actually got assigned to the academy right after I began that process. And then I was assigned to our academy for 2 years, and I stayed there. Um, I was basically an instructor, and I was like the firefighter position at the academy was to basically be in charge of, maybe in charge isn't the right word, but I had to manage like the fleet and the tools and everything. So I had a lot of jobs basically to do, and on top of instructing every day. And I fell in love with instructing just as much as I fell in love with doing the actual job. Um, it's very
It's a
rewarding
very
when, yeah,
rewarding
like when
job,
you,
you know, getting to see something that you've put into somebody else and actually to see that applied. And as you said, you're still on a suppression too. You're riding an engine, but you're helping at the academy. So if you get to see these people come out of the academy, I would say, and come out onto the job and actually put what they've learned into play. So I'd say that can be very rewarding for you.
yeah, it is. It's really awesome. Like seeing these guys come through and especially once they're cleared to start working overtime. So, you know, all the young guys, they start working all kinds of overtime. So they start cycling through my firehouse. Uh, and it's just cool to see them come through and you talk to them and they'll be like, you remember when you said this to us or when you did this? And uh, that's always really cool. My favorite is when they're like, I always loved it, the class that you taught, which I lead the safety and survival program. Like, I really love that class. That always makes you feel really good. And then the other night, 2 shifts ago, I got detailed on the back half of the shift to a different firehouse to fill in as an officer. So um, I'm currently on a promotional list uh, for lieutenant. And when you're on the list, you can act if there's a vacancy and they don't have another officer to fill. So I got moved to fill in as an officer at a different firehouse. And one of the newer rookies, he's only been in the field maybe 3 months. Uh, he was assigned to ride back step on the engine that day. And when I walked in, he came up and was asking me basically what I expected him to do, and he seemed really nervous. And I was like, "Hey, like, you good?" He's like, "Yeah, I just don't want to mess anything up." He's like, "I haven't been to a fire yet," and I was like, "Dude, you're good, man." I was like, "I got confidence in you." I said, "I know you were trained well." I said, I said, don't be afraid of it. Like, we'll make it work. If we go to a fire, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out." And we didn't. We slept all night. So
That's something you got to get out of your head, anyways. You know, I was actually just talking about this with Mike Nasty earlier. You know, you're gonna mess up. It's gonna happen, and a lot of it, you know, it's learning moments and how you rebound back from it.
absolutely, and that's definitely something I struggle with too. Um, Especially the few times that I've had to act as an officer, fill in as an officer role. It's definitely been some mistakes that I've made that have been I don't know. I guess I'm just really hard on myself, but I have to remind myself the same thing. I give that advice to other people. Sometimes it's not as easy to take the same advice yourself.
It's not, and you know, that's something that I dealt with too. I just came out of my first year from being promoted to the company officer position in my department, and it's a huge learning curve, especially because I struggled some as a driver. I kind of fell out from the job for a while, and actually, the class that you helped with at Capitol with the Bears of the Oath down in Dalton, Georgia,
Hmm.
back a few years ago. I think it was 2020 or no 2020.
Yeah, I think it was 21. Yep.
I got down there and I was a driver at the time, and started looking at all the skill stations, and I was that guy who was like, man, yeah, I got promoted to engineer. Like I've not trained on fireman task in forever because I'm just that fucking complacent asshole. And I remember going down there to that class and leaving after the first day, and I was like, holy shit, like I've got to do something about this. And that was a big pivotal point for me in my career. But
Yeah, I mean
that was
that's
one of the
great.
reasons in wanting to kind of start doing some of this was to hopefully prevent that from happening to anybody else. Keep them in love with the job from falling into those pits to where you just think everything's fine or you don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, everybody needs it from time to time. It doesn't escape everybody. So
It doesn't. So, which one do you enjoy more? Teaching with Capital, you get to travel and visit all these different departments and see different regions of different parts of the fire service. Because I'm sure, as you saw when you was teaching down in Georgia, that a lot of stuff can be different region to region compared to teaching at the academy and getting to see kind of some of that progress on through people's careers.
yeah, it definitely is. Man, that is a really hard question. I don't I don't really know which one I do prefer more, to be completely honest with you, man. Uh, I really like them both. You know, I have a I have a personal stake when I'm teaching at the academy because these are people that I'm going to be running calls with, people that I'm going to have to rely on at some point. Um, and I even have some family that live, in Frederick County. So, to some extent, they are protecting some of my family as well. Um, so I take a lot of pride in what I do at our academy. Um, but at the same time, traveling is awesome. Um, I think I've probably learned just as much from students when I'm instructing them than I have, you know, actually teaching. And that's simply because when you start moving around and get outside of your bubble, there's so many other perspectives. Um, I've been amazed at the differences at how places operate, or even the differences in certain types of skills, or tactics that are used, or depending on staffing levels, or whatever the case is. But Tennessee's not that far, really, but it's still a completely different world than the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area that I'm in.
Absolutely. And especially you start talking about what I've saw a lot is the volunteer side. Like our southeastern region, the volunteer culture and just the service in general, compared to the northeastern region, once you start getting up that way, is polar opposites. And I'm not as active as a volunteer nearly as much as I used to be, but that was something that we tried to push for. People would be like, well, look at these departments. Well, look at what they have. And I'm
Hmm.
like, if you want to have what these departments have and you want to build that culture, like you got to start implementing that. There's a real bad I only want to be here for one thing kind of stigma around volunteer departments in this area. So it even for totally different aspects, you don't have to be that far away, but it changes a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's I can see that for sure. But um, the other thing with traveling around is meeting people. Just the people in general are awesome, and uh, it's funny. You always hear the term of like Southern hospitality, right? And I always make this joke that the farther north you go, the more assholes people are. Until you get north of Boston. Once you get into like Vermont and Maine, everybody's nice again because they're basically Canadians. But like you get DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, each time you go up north a little bit more, New York, and then to Boston, like everybody becomes a little bit more of an asshole. And it's it's not just in the fire service, it's everywhere. Like everywhere around here. Like it's not that there's people aren't friendly, but uh it's not overwhelmingly friendly, right? And then we travel and we go to Georgia. We go to Texas, we go to the Carolinas, and it's like everybody is so nice and accommodating. Um, so that's something that uh, like myself and RJ have tried to bring back to our department. Like that's completely not even necessarily fire department related, but just being fucking nicer to people. being more accommodating to people, like bringing that back. It's,
And
something that we need here.
kind of getting into that, and I know you wanted to speak a little bit about it, but I know we talked the other day. You got some of the guys from Bears of the Oath coming up for a conference that y'all are putting on, and that's kind of
Yeah.
something that we had hit on about you wanting to bring some of that Southern hospitality back to your area.
Yep. Absolutely. That was a big part of it. And then the other part is it seems like people in our region get focused and concentrated in our region. They don't, there, there's not a lot of people who go out of their way to travel or to take outside classes or to teach. So the whole point of us making our own conference in Frederick was a couple of things. Is we wanted to bring our friends from Bears that we've made over the years. We wanted to bring them up, show them around. They've taken us in down south, so we wanted to bring them in, in Maryland, and we wanted to show our own people that you know it's cool to do these things with people um, from elsewhere. It's cool to learn from people from elsewhere. It's cool to teach people from elsewhere. And then the other thing that it does is we were also providing an opportunity for our people to start teaching on a bigger level than just our own academy. So um, we have outside instructors. We have some big name people coming in, but most of our people giving lectures, probably half, 50% of our people giving lectures are Frederick people. Yeah.
So that's
And
something unique. You don't see that a lot. Small town fire conferences are popping up all over the place, but everybody's grabbing for the big name instructors, and nothing wrong with them. I got to meet some great guys over at a conference in North Carolina back last August, and you can tell with some of them who's there for the right purpose and who's not. There's a big difference. It's something else that we talked about before, kind of offline, was being in it for money.
yeah, you do anything for the money, then you're going to be sorely upset. It's definitely the wrong reason.
It
Um,
is. That's how
but
I won't throw anybody's name around on a podcast or nothing, but there's been instances where instructors are canceling on conferences after they've been paid in full because there's not enough people registered to. They don't want to come give their lecture. They don't want to give their class. When you've got a
yeah,
straight fee that's already outrageously expensive, and then you cancel because, oh well, I was expecting this many people here. It's not worth my time for the travel. Like, you're in it for the wrong reasons
yeah,
at that point.
dude, the way we look at it with capital, we travel, we don't care, man. If we have one student, if we have somebody who signed up and is there and wants to take the class, we're going to take our time to teach them. Um, there was a conference I went to uh, over the summer. I forget exactly when it was, but it was over the summer. And actually, no, it was in no, I think it was in November. Anyway, it was in Florida. It was hot, so it felt like summer. I'm not going to name the actual conference itself because I think part of the reasons we had such a small class was they were slightly disorganized. Uh, so I don't necessarily want to call them out, but um, they were running lectures at the same time as hands-on training versus having them on separate days. And so I think that took a lot of what would be people who would sit in for lectures were going to the hands-on. That's nobody wants to sit through a lecture if you can do hands-on.
Yeah. When
So
somebody's got a
anyway,
live fire class going next door at the academy,
yeah,
it's hard to get somebody to come in and sit down with a
yeah,
notebook and listen to you
yeah.
talk for an hour or two.
So we got picked up for that conference to present three different presentations. So three of us went, and I was one of them. And I had four people in my class. And I mean, it's like, man, yeah, of course I would love for this classroom to be full, but whatever. Like four people, so they wanted to be here and wanted to listen to me. So I'm going to give them what I got. So
Still putting the
that's the way
same
you got to
amount of
look at it.
energy into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a good time. And then with our conference as well, the hands-on portion is all the lead instructors are Frederick people from our department. So um, I'm leading the RIT class, um, and then we've got a live fire engine class, a live fire truck class. We've got an extrication class. Um, we've got a forcible entry class, and we have believe it or not, we have an EMS class because one of our EMS guys wanted to put a class on. I said, absolutely. You don't see that very often. That makes us well-rounded. So
So that's one of the things that
you
we
want
had
to put it
talked
on, let's
about
do it.
doing for a while. We were had up in the air of doing a conference, but some stuff kind of fell through with it. And we were going to throw some EMS in there just to try to grab people's attention that need CEUs. If they can come on day one and get some CEUs that they need, but on day two they stick around for some fire rescue training, then it's a win-win for them. So that may help y'all
Sure.
draw some people in as well.
Yeah. So the name of it is Key City Fire Conference. So Key City is Frederick's nickname because you guys are familiar with Francis Scott Key, the guy who wrote the national anthem. He's a Frederick native. So he was born and raised and died and buried in Frederick. So we call it Key City. Um, so anyway, it's Key City Fire Conference, and it's in March 14th, 15th, and 16th. And then something else that we do, um, our union puts on a very large St. Patty's Day bash every year, and it's a pretty big deal in Frederick. And it just so the schedule lined up that we could run our conference for 3 days, and then the fourth day we could have our St. Patty's Day event for our union. Um, so, and this actually came about because last year when we were in Texas for Dagum, uh, we had to leave early. So that was another event that Bears was running. So Shane and those guys, they were pretty disappointed that we were leaving early. We're like, we got to get back to Frederick for St. Patty's Day. Like, it's a big deal for us. Um, like, so they were like, oh shit, like maybe we should come. And so we got to thinking about it, and RJ and I were brainstorming and like, dude, we can do it. Why not? Like, and we started thinking of all the reasons we would want to hold one. We looked at the calendar. We're like, this is perfect. We could run it into St. Patty's Day. We can invite guys from Bears, and so I mean that's what we're doing. So it's going to be a great time.
This sounds like it's going to be great. You get a couple days of good training in, then they can stick around long enough, get to celebrate a little bit too.
Yeah.
So, what about the Hasty Fire Products? What led to the creation of your newest endeavors with that?
All right. It's kind of a long story. Depends what version of it you want. Um, the gist of it is, like I said, I lead our safety and survival program in Frederick, and RIT training has always been something I've always been really interested in. I've taken a lot of my own like classes on my own time on RIT stuff. Um, I just think it's really fun, right? And I got lucky enough to be assigned as the safety and survival guy at our academy, so I teach that. And then we had a line of duty death in our department in 2001, and that was a very hard one for me to kind of come to terms with. Um, just being the nature of what I teach, and leading up to that day, it was like a month before the event that happened. Um, I had put our entire department through an in-service training, so this was when I was assigned to our academy, and the lieutenant of training and the chief of training came to me, and they said, hey, we got this acquired structure. It's a school. It's an old elementary school. And of course, it's in the summertime, middle of the summer, because that's when school's out. So they're like, we have a 2-week window that we can train in it. We want to put together a RIT drill. We want to run the department through it. And they basically handed me the keys to it and said, figure it out. So I went out and I looked at the building and I decided what I wanted to do, and um, went to them with the plan and said, this is what I want to do. This is like materials and stuff I need to build it out. They gave me the good, like green light, go ahead. And so we did all that. And then over the course of 3 days, because we run 3 shifts, we ran the entire department through. So it was in service. So they were on duty. They got detailed out to the site. They went through the drill and they went back to duty. So the only people that didn't get it were guys who just so happened to be off one of those days. Um, Fast forward 1 month almost to the day is when we had the incident that killed Captain Josh Laird. So that one was hard for me to come to terms with the fact that like I just did this drill with the entire department that was pretty intense, and there were aspects of it that were eerily similar to what actually happened on that incident. So after a little bit of time, I start talking to some of the guys who were involved in the rescue. Um, One of them's a really good friend of mine in the department, and then the other one I ended up working with quite closely at the academy. He had an assignment there later on, and the more I start talking to these guys, trying to get a feel for what happened and get an understanding, um, it's like everybody talks about how the waist belt conversion on a down firefighter is difficult. Which I mean it is, especially under stress and low visibility. It's very difficult. But there were some things that happened on this call that like a waist belt conversion, right? Like this guy, he was pretty notorious for not wearing his waist belt. So they had a pretty hellacious basement fire. He fell through the floor into the basement. Um, they had legitimate zero visibility, obviously high stress levels, right? And then on top of that, this house was huge. It was a giant mansion and it was gas fed. So they were dealing with extreme heat, uh, and legitimately zero visibility. He told me at one point he lifted his console up from his shoulder to check his air and he couldn't see it, like that close to his face. That's how thick and dark the smoke was. So, um, with all of that going on, they were unable to locate his waist belt straps to get him in some sort of harness. And then they attempted to go for the DRD and they couldn't find it. For whatever reason. I don't know exactly if his pack was covering it or whatever the case was. It doesn't really matter. Um, at the end of the day, it's both of those skills are things that are can be pretty inefficient at times, right? So I really just wanted to find a better way. Like, is there a better way that we can rescue people? And I think about some of the RIT trainings we do. I'm sure you've seen it because I know we did it in Dalton where we were using the pick-off straps, right? You use a rope rescue pick-off strap to go between the legs, capture a point on the shoulder straps, and now you've got a makeshift harness on your down fireman if you need to hoist them or whatever. So I, I had been working on mine a little bit. It was like a smaller version of that, but it was also very similar to another device that somebody else had made, and I didn't necessarily want to steal his idea or anything. And then the idea of putting handles on it and kind of changing the construction up a little bit came to me, and I was like, this could work, right? So this could be our better way. So the whole intention is to be able to quickly put a down fireman in a harness, um, quickly and like without messing with any part of their pack. So you don't have to undo their waist belt. If their waist belt's not done at all, it doesn't matter. Um, and then it also provides a point for dragging if you want to, or you can use those attachment points in some sort of lifting or hoisting system. So it's kind of an all-in-one device. Or you can choose not to use it at all. Like it doesn't matter. It's conditions are going to dictate what you need to do. But if you find yourself in a position where you need to put a harness on somebody, I wanted a device that's going to be easy to use. So that's kind of what I developed.
That's what I enjoy about it. Like I said, we've gotten to use it some out in the bay. Haven't got to put too many hoisting drills, anything like that, together with it yet. But just having so many options out of one device compared to people, which I've see all of your social media posts, things like that, and it's one thing about social media. I don't know. You don't have to buy products. You can. It's easy to just scroll up to the next. You don't have to
Yep.
stop and put your input on everything. But people say things. It's this is just a strap. It's a practically a piece of webbing, things like that. And just from the little bit that we've got to use your product so far, it's proven to be much more. There's just so many different options, and it's so versatile that it's endless. Having that ability to be able to rig it up quickly. There's no tie knots, like you said. You're not having to unhook anything. It's simple, and then being able to drag and hoist off of the same device that quickly, I think it's a game changer. I mean, that's my
Yeah.
honest opinion on it.
And like part of the reason that I went with actually, first of all, thank you. I appreciate that. But part of the reason I went with the specific length that I did and specific types of carabiners that I did is when you when you use like the pick off strap, for example, you're usually clipping into the whatever you call it, the parachute buckle or some sort of buckle in the adjustment part of your shoulder straps, right? So for one, there's no way to prevent it from coming undone because it's not long enough to go any higher than that. And even if you cinch down um, on the pickoff strap, you can potentially bump those buckles and loosen the shoulder straps up. So that was one thing I wanted to prevent that. And two, it's easier in low visibility to just reach up and find the shoulder strap than it is to find that little attachment point in the buckle, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah,
wanted it long
absolutely.
enough that you can attach it up high, and big enough that you can just grab the strap and capture the whole thing instead of trying to find an attachment point. Now, it doesn't mean you could, there's nothing, no reason you couldn't go to those buckles if that's the only thing you can find, whatever you need to do to make it happen quick. But the intention is to go up higher where it's easy. Um, so
That was
just
one of
tried
the
to make it
things
efficient.
that we've got that we kind of played around with it. Some was seeing hooking it to different places on the pack, how it would affect it. And just in our experience, the couple hours that we put it to use so far is it doesn't matter where we put it, it's still going to work. Up
Yeah,
high seems to be, as you said, the most efficient way, but even in low visibility, if you can just grab something and find it, if you can halfway get it there, it's still going to work for you.
sure. Yep. Yep.
And
And then,
especially, you and I talked about even if you could use it in conjunction with some kind of sked, if you had even tossed on top of a RIT bag or if you had a fast board, something like that to put it to use with, you start throwing some of those tools together and the speed that you could put behind a RIT drill or RIT operation that would traditionally take so long, you're cutting that down to fractions.
yeah. And then whether you're using any of those devices you just mentioned or a combination of them, like the entire point is to have options. And, I tried to make it affordable that uh, it's not out of the ordinary or out of reach for people to be able to get one. And you can either keep it in your RIT stuff or it's also small enough that you can put it in your pocket, right? If you got the pocket space or you want to carry it in your pocket, you can. And at the end of the day, it's all my mission was to put options out there for people. Um, I want life-saving devices out there because of the line of duty deaths that I've experienced. That that's my way of honoring them. You know what I mean? Like I don't want it to happen again. Uh, Unfortunately, we all know it's going to, but the more life-saving options that you can put out there, the more tools you can have in your toolbox, the better off we're all going to be.
Absolutely. And if the work and the effort that you've been able to put into this product, in the training, whatever it may be, if you can just make a change in what one outcome is, then that's a career's worth right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sorry, what you saying about the cost of it and having the option to you can toss it, in a pocket of a RIT bag. But I really like how you said that it's small enough and it's affordable enough that a fireman can easily go out. This is something that they can purchase, and whether it be a pants pocket or one of the straps that I carried for a long time, I preferred to keep it in the radio pocket. And something I could see
Hmm.
very easily with your strap too is feeding that through the carabiner, and you are always going to know where that is because just like you said with the incident that your department has, sometimes these zero visibility, you combine that tool with easy access and easy rigging of the device, and I don't honestly, there may be one, but I don't know of another device out there, any kind of product that's going to be more simpler than that. It's practically dummy proof.
Yeah. It seems like most people from the feedback I've received are either keeping it in their radio pocket or in their pants pocket. Um, I've played around with both. Right now, I'm keeping mine in my pants pocket, um, mostly because I like to keep my emergency wire cutters in my radio pocket. I feel like that's easier for me to get to if I get tangled up. and I haven't figured out a better way to carry those yet. Uh, Otherwise, I would like my strap to be in the radio pocket, but um, I've gotten good enough getting the strap out of my pants pocket that I'm good with that. So
Well, that's just like with anything else. No matter where you decide to keep these tools, whatever it may be, is training on it. It's easy to judge something whenever you've not laid hands on it. But even if you're a fan of it and you want to buy one, I mean, it's something that you're gonna have to train on. The more time that you put in with it, even the easier it's gonna be. Like I said, I've only put a couple hours in so far, but I'm sure as time goes on, the more repetitions, it's only gonna get better.
yeah, and that goes for anything, right? Not just my device. Any tool that you get, if you're going to carry it in your gear, you need to be proficient with it, and then you also need to be open-minded. There's so many people you see on social media that and again, not just my device, but anytime somebody has something that is either a new technique or a new tool, you read the comments on anything, and it's always a bunch, not always a bunch, but there's always some negativity on it's so much easier to do it like this, and it's like, all right, cool. Look, you don't have to buy this. I'm not saying that, but you should have an open mind about new techniques and new tools. Because like we said earlier, you need to keep that toolbox full. You're not going to be able to do everything with the same technique all the time. You have to have options, and you have to be good at like you should have a plan A, but then you also need to be proficient at whatever your plan B and C is as well, in my opinion. So anytime you see any new device on the market that you're willing to try it with an open mind, and you know use it the way that they're telling you to use it, or try to experiment your own way and see if it'll work for you. Um, and if it doesn't, then you know it doesn't work for you. But
Well, I
if
like
it
what you
does,
said there
then
about
even better.
having options, because the same people that's the kind of thing they want to throw around. It's no different than any other tool equipment that we carry in our pockets, as you said, or even on the rig. If it was one size fit all in the fire service, then we'd have trucks with one compartment and one hose line on them.
Yeah,
That's just not how it works. Every incident that we go to is going to be different. Every fire, every firefighter mayday, every RID incident, vehicle accident, whatever you may respond to, it's not going to be the same. We've got to keep, it's an open mind. Keep your options out there.
yep. That's a.
So
So
getting
you
back on
said
the,
okay.
okay, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead with your question. I'll come back
Getting
to that
back
one.
to a little bit of your operations in your fire department. You notice you said that you were on the lieutenant's list. What was?
Yep, I am.
So how does
So
that work for Frederick?
so uh, you have to, for one, meet the requirements of time, and there's certain classes you have to get. Um, Once you are eligible, you'll apply for the process when they announce one, and then there's a written test. And if you pass the written test high enough, then you'll go on to the um, I don't know what they call it, the practical test, I guess. And that's more of like what you see in a lot of bigger departments, like the assessment center, um, which that consisted of an emergency scenario, a writing exercise, and a employee counseling. So I did very, very well in the emergency incident, and I did not do very well in the employee counseling. I mean, I did good enough, to get by, but
So we
it's
do
funny.
a
You could
assessment
definitely see where
center.
my focus was.
That's why we're here. I mean, the emergency operations part of it. We do
Yeah.
an assessment center as well, even for a smaller size department, which I think is good. Putting people's practical evaluation to test.
Yep.
But I went through the captain's assessment multiple times and failed it. And the last time that I went through, whenever I got promoted, I think I got luck of the draw because the emergency incident uh, that we did, it had always been a fire before that, and like super large fires. Like it's not like we were coming in there and you were thrown into a residential fire. It'd be the biggest building in town with multiple victims and just have people ready to scratch their eyeballs out. But I came in last time and it was a hazmat incident, and I was the only hazmat tech that had applied for the job, so I had a little bit of a leg up on everybody else.
Yeah. No,
So now that
ours
you're
was a
on the
fire.
list, I mean, does that just kind of go off of, is it ranked? Does that just
Yeah.
whenever it comes your time, it falls into
Yep.
play?
Pretty much. Yep, yep. It's a ranked list. Once you complete the assessment center, they do interviews, and then it's a ranked list. And as vacancies become available, they most of the time they just pick, in order on the list.
Like to
Vacancies can come up either what we've been doing a lot lately because our county's been growing, our department's been growing, is we've been promoting a lot of people because of staffing new firehouses or even staffing more units in the same firehouses. So that's helped a lot. And then we're getting to the point where we're starting to have a lot of people retire as well. So I don't know exactly what all the retirements look like, but it looks like I should probably get it definitely within a year, but probably within a few months. I just need two people to go.
I like to you talked about once you're on the list, you're able to kind of float and fill vacancies in other firehouses, things like that. That's not something that I'm too familiar with from around this area. Uh, is that something that every time that an officer vacancy in your department that they do, or does the driver operator ever step over into that role?
No, it's not all the time. Um, to fill a company officer role, you have to either be an officer, so either a lieutenant or a captain, um, or you have to be on the ranked eligibility list. You can't just bump over just because you're the senior guy. So anybody that's going to act in an officer's position has passed the test, basically.
I like that because I mean, to me, that shows that they've already proven something. They've already gained those some of those abilities and the knowledge, skills needed to start filling those roles. Compared to the area where I'm from, you can get promoted to driver operator. You show you're proficient enough to operate the rig, and then your officer takes off. And most of the time, they're going to be like, "All right, well, today's your first day bumping up to captain." So
Mm.
you kind of throw some people at some leadership under fire scenarios there compared to actually having a little bit of experience in that role.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Um, I'm also very fortunate that my officer, my lieutenant, he lets me ride up front a lot. So we run a rotation, right? So we're an engine company, and we also have an ambulance in our firehouse. So um, the firefighters rotate ambulance and engine, and then I'm also an engine driver. So if we call them technicians, but the promoted engine driver, if he's off, I fill his role. So I do a lot more engine time than some do. Plus, I've been in it long enough. But anyway, uh, my officer's pretty cool. He's pretty big on seniority. Um, so I get a lot more engine time than some do. And then if it's my engine day and I'm not driving, he basically offers it to me first thing in the morning. He's like, "You want to ride up front?" So he'll go sit in the back and he'll let me ride up front, and he basically lets me be in charge, and he'll just shadow me, um, you know, reel me back in if I start going off the rails, or otherwise he just lets me do my thing and lets me learn, and it's it's really awesome that for one our department allows us to do that, and two that he's willing to do that as well. So
That's something that we've played around with some too, kind of keeping while the company officer's there, letting people fill the next role up and kind of get some experience on that job while they're still under supervision, especially in the officer's position. You know, if you're filling that role for the day and your officer's riding in the back, then he's also still there to kind of point the direction or kind of give you some insight on anything that they
yep,
think you could have done a little bit better or different, or every once in a while even a pat on the back like, hey, this went well, then that's a cue in your mind like, okay, well, this is what I need to do from here on out. So I can definitely see where that can help a lot with preparing on promotions and stepping in the new roles in the fire service.
any opportunity I get to practice a little bit, or try to get better at it before, yeah, it's all on me. Like I'm going to take it. So um, whether that's operating under my officer in the officer seat, or getting a chance to act at a different firehouse, that's cool too. Actually, I did get lucky enough a couple months ago. One one shift that my lieutenant was off. I guess they didn't. They do fill the spot with an officer first. So if there's an officer signed up for overtime, they'll fill that with an officer first before they go to the acting list. But I guess nobody was signed up, so they bumped me up. So I got to act with my own shift, which was great because it's easy to operate with those guys. And then we got lucky enough that we went to 2 fires that day, and it was just a lot of fun, like to be with my own guys going to fires as the officer. Um,
People that you already know how things are
yeah,
going to go when you get there. You're kind of used to their operations and what
yep,
you're accustomed to. Kind of
yeah.
makes it a little bit easier, take some of that nervousness off. But on the same hand, I'd say it's pretty neat too, getting to fill that role and go visit other firehouses. How many firehouses are y'all operating?
We have, I think it's 27 fire stations. Yeah. So they're mostly engine companies. We don't staff a lot of specials. So we have one staffed rescue squad and two staffed um, ladder companies for the whole county. Now, that's what I hard staffed, right? Where they're constantly staffed. We do have multiple firehouses where there's shared staffing between the engine and the truck. Um, and then just, depending on what's due or what the order is, they may jump pieces. But um, I completely forget where I was going with that. But um, the opportunities are there, and it is cool to go act in a firehouse that I'm not used to, people that I'm not used to, areas that I'm not used to, especially with, like I was saying earlier, the dynamic of our county being so large, and we have everything from urban to rural, um, industrial stuff. Like we have railroads, like we got everything, all kinds of hazards, multiple interstates. So anywhere you go, there's the opportunity for something interesting to happen. And on the same side, you can go from my firehouse in the downtown portion of the city, where there's hydrants every 300 feet, to uh, being due from that firehouse to a rural part of the county where there's no hydrants and it's all rural water. Um, so it's definitely interesting, and it's good um, to get around once in a while, not just be stuck at the city station doing the same thing all the time. You know what I mean? Like going to learn the other ways. It keeps me on my toes, which is something that is good for me to get in the habit of now, because most likely when I promote, I'll go and I'll be a float position. So um, typically our freshly promoted people, they float. So um, I'll be moving around the county anyway and filling whatever vacancy there is until eventually I get a permanent spot.
I think that's good too. In a department like yours, where you said you've got kind of a little bit of every different kind of setting, keep people from getting complacent into one area. If you're stuck in downtown forever and then you get promoted and you stay there and you're never going to different places, nothing says that 10 years from now you're not going to get moved out to a more rural station. And the tactics, everything completely changes in some
Yep,
aspects compared to where you go
yep.
to. How does that look for y'all's training? Because there's so many, it's so broad, and with you being involved in the academy and not just from different types of incidents, but just for, say, fires, like you said, the water supply, where downtown you've got a hydrant everywhere. Like you could throw a rock, you can hand jack a hydrant to a hydrant
Hmm.
on every incident, compared to the rural setting to where you're lucky if there's one there. So how does that translate over to how you train your people?
Well, we are a policy driven department when it comes to fires. So um, every unit in the running order has an assigned task from the get. All you have to do is know what position you're supposed to arrive in. You know what your job is from the start. Um, and there are differences in those policies. We have a hydrant area policy and a non-hydrant area policy. So basically, you just have to determine, is it rural, or are there hydrants? And with that, you can determine based on your running order what your job is basically on that call. Um, and so really we train our guys to do that. Um, it's not something we focus on really hard in the academy, because we try to keep our academy basic. It is the basic building blocks, and it is expected of our field personnel to expand upon that when the recruits or rookies get to the field. Um, but we do try to incorporate that in like monthly drills or, um, you know, once or twice a year we do those in-service trainings like I talked about. Um, we try to focus on all that, but we do cover like rural water supply and stuff with the recruits, and we do make them do it. I believe it's in their Fire 2 program.
See, the
So,
which obviously the city that I work for, we're all we're real close in together, so it's all city operations. But the rural service, the volunteer side, there wasn't much crossover there for many years, and just within the last, I think it's been 3 4 years, there's a large mutual aid agreement called Tri-State Mutual Aid that our departments joined. So we kind of expanded our regions of where we responded to. We didn't run much mutual aid beforehand with the county, and now we do. Which most of the people that I work with, they came from the local county service, but the ones who aren't, and especially you get used to that city setting, and now you're going mutual aid out to BFE, and we're used
yeah,
to like you are downtown to where it's few and far between when we don't have access to a hydrant, and then we get out there and the area where I'm at, the rural setting, you're lucky if the closest hydrant even works.
yeah. And you know what? That brings up a pretty cool perspective too. I'm assuming that the city you work for is in the county surrounding, right? That you're talking about that you go mutual aid with. Like, um, for us, it's one. Like the entire county, 660 some square miles is all one department, with
Well, see,
one
even
one policy.
our
Yeah,
county
that's
service is 11 separate volunteer fire departments. They don't operate under any kind of standing umbrella of policies for each other. Nothing. You got departments that do things polar opposite, and it
yeah, I
can
can.
run into issues because the way our county pages for fires is it's two departments off the bat is the initial page. So every fire, you're at least getting two departments have no ties with each other than the fact that they run calls together.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be a challenge. Um, we do run mutual aid with other counties in other states. We actually run uh, something crazy like 6 or 7 different counties in 3 different states. Just because of where we're located, we can run into parts of Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. But
The mutual aid agreement that we've signed into is pretty interesting because it takes a lot off of the department and off of uh, an incident commander on the scene. They do a lot of the legwork for you, getting resources in, backfilling resources. It's as simple as a phone call. We had a large fire in our downtown area in 16, I believe it was. And if it hadn't been for that mutual aid organization, we'd have burnt down a city block. But it's as simple as, hey, I think I need 3 aerials, an engine, maybe a rehab unit, whatever. You name it, you call them and they'll get it to you. They'll backfill your stations, they'll backfill the stations that sent trucks to you, and it takes all that away from anybody who's there on the scene having to worry about the incident stabilization or whatever your IAP is working on at the time, and worrying about trying to get the resources there and the rest of your district covered at the same time. They do all of it. So it was something that
yeah,
was interesting to kind of see come into play, but it's
yeah,
whoever came up with it, it was a great idea.
yeah, it sounds like it works pretty well. Definitely. It's I was talking about earlier how when you travel and you see how different things are. Um, I I I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that the whole county system, like what I'm in, is something that is pretty specific to that mid-Atlantic region. And then I think some of the West Coast, like in California and stuff, I think operate that way. But it seems like mostly when I've traveled down south anyway, um, in that the Georgias, Carolinas, Texas, and even Florida, it seemed like there are a lot of smaller departments that operate near each other versus one larger, department that kind of encompasses all of it. And the other thing that I found interesting was, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but it seemed like a lot of the places in Georgia, like it was rare for somebody to do a career in the same department, right, from start to finish. It seemed like they would move, um, and you ask them like how many years you got on, and it was almost like they were giving you some sort of resume. Like I did, 6 years in this department, and then I went and did 4 years in this department, and then I went to this department as an officer and did X amount of years there. We're like, here, that's unheard of because everybody starts at the bottom, regardless of where you came from and how much time you've got on. Like we've hired people that were career elsewhere and they start as a rookie. It just is what it is. But the majority of, like, we do have people that leave, but the majority of our people, they get hired as a recruit and then they retire 20, 25 years later in the same department. So,
I think that
is it
says
like that
something
in
about your
Tennessee?
department as well. I can't say a lot for some of the other career departments, but for us, we don't have many people working for us right now that came from other career departments, except for people that have relocated from other parts of the country. We've got a couple. The firefighter on my rig came from Michigan, but we did go through a big turnover phase mixed in with a little bit of retirement back about a year or two in once I got hired, and it turned. I mean, completely flipped a lot of things upside down for us because it turned us into a super young department between the people that left and decided to make career changes or go work elsewhere, and the ones that retired, especially for a smaller size department. It We took a lot of tenure off the job, so
Yeah.
we've got people. I mean, coming up in my department, my time frame promotion wise was about every 2.5 years you were jumping into a different role. We don't have many people riding the back seat that have been there for a long time, aside from the ones who have just never had any interest in promoting. So it's nothing strange for us to see a company officer sitting there with 6 7 years on the job. I actually had a battalion chief that left, decided to go into law enforcement. He left about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and when he left, he was 27 years old. So he's the shift commander for us, and
Wow.
surprisingly, he was the I would say the best officer I've ever worked for. So it's not worked out bad for us. It's just kind of strange whenever we start networking, talking to other people, and you'll have guys that are 20 something years on the job, and they're looking at like, yeah, I think I'm ready to step into that officer's position, and we're like, yeah, we've got guys that are 5 6 years guy, and we're throwing them in the captain seat on the engine. So it was a learning curve, but we've definitely dealt with some of those things ourselves.
Yeah. There's that's not necessarily a bad thing though. For one, that's not a unique problem. Like we have it as well. Like, for different reasons. Ours is just because of an explosive growth. So, um, I would say, I don't know the numbers offhand, and I could be a little bit off, but I would say probably 60% of our department is less than 5 years long. Like, and that's just because we are constantly hiring people. The needs are just there. The county is growing, the department's growing, and we just need to constantly be hiring people. And to that, we've got a lot of, quote unquote young officers, whether they're young or old, but less time on the job, including myself, right? Like I said, I've got 8 years on. It's not a super long time. Now, I do, I have that 10 years of volunteer experience, but that doesn't pull nearly as much weight, as the time that you've done actually in the department. So, but like, I don't think it's a bad thing to have people with less time on the job promote. But it's not, I don't think it's necessarily the right move for everybody to do that. Not everybody can promote that early and still be good.
It's not,
Some
and
people
in
do
the
need,
same hand, we've got people every day, and they might be a damn good fireman and then 20 30 years on the job, but that time on the job doesn't equate to how they're going to do in the next role. And
sure, yeah,
especially, there's a lot of departments in this area where we don't catch many fires. We've hit dry spells. We're in a dry spell ourselves right now, to where we're, at least my shift's not catching anything. We're ready to beat our heads off the wall. But
I feel
to
you on that.
where it's an easy place for people that aren't into the job, and you hear the phrase a lot, and I love it, is that years into the job are a lot different than years on the job. But
Yeah,
it's easy for those people who aren't as into the job to sit back and hide in the shadows somewhere even when they get to a fire, because there's always those people there that they love it. Like that's what they want to do. They have the drive and the passion to do more. So they
Hmm.
kind of cover that up. So there's easy places for people to just kind of float through their career and not have to put in any extra effort.
Yeah. I don't think it matters where you're located or how big your department is. I think those are the same issues everywhere. Um, we deal with the same thing. And I said I felt your pain on the your shift not going to fires, dude. Fuck. 2022 was horrible for my shift, right? So in the back of our bay at our firehouse, we have a whiteboard, and it's just like a friendly competition between the shifts. And it like at the top it says, working jobs, right? And so it's the date, the box area, what you were due as, what you arrived as, and the address, and then the shift, right? So you look at the board in 2022, and I'm on C shift, and it was B, B, A, B, B, A, B, B. C shift didn't run like November. It was horrible. Yeah,
I'm on C shift here where I work, and B shift seems to be our fire shift here lately. Like I said, I
yeah,
just came out of my first full year being promoted back in January. And my first year being promoted, my shift had two residential and one industrial, and that's all we had.
yeah.
That was it.
We've had a couple more since then. I think it started in November. We fought a couple in November, December, and a couple already this year. So I think we're back on track. But man, that first 10, 11 months was ridiculous. It was horrible.
That's
Our
we're
shift
coming out
group
of
chat
winter,
would
and so
go,
last night I was on shift, and the driver on my truck, I'm lucky that he's actually my best friend from high school. But I was sitting back in the office doing some reports, and he just kind of came back here and was talking, and he's like, "Man, we're about to make it out of structure fire season with no structure fires."
hope the tide turns for you.
That's I hate to be that guy who's like, I want somebody's shit to burn. But I'm like, man, there's some stuff in town that it could stand a fire too.
Yeah. I don't want it to burn, but if it's going to, it needs to be on my shift.
Yeah, I don't want anybody's stuff to burn, but if it just so happens to happen, can it wait till I come on?
Yeah, we had a multi-alarm fire downtown last week. It was an
I remember
old
seeing that one
building.
on social media.
Yeah, I forget what year it was built, but it was really old. And it's an old antique shop. And we've actually walked that building before. And like they had that place packed full of, there's like an antique shop on the first floor. And then the second floor and attic was just all storage. It was packed full. Not my shift, right? B shift as always. Uh, but I was traveling through because I was going to, one of my shift mates is moving to Minnesota and got on a job out there. So we were having to go on a away party for him. And as I was coming through, I saw the notification on my phone and I kind of looked and I saw the column. And so I told my kids, I said, "Hey, y'all want to go buff a fire?" And of course the kids are, they're all excited. They're like, "Yeah, let's go." So dude, we ended up downtown for like hours and I turned the corner and there's my officer. He did the same thing. He was on the way to the party too. And he's like, "Well, I guess we're going to be late." I'm like, yeah. So we were watching it and, uh, it's cool you know, to go buff your own department off duty. But the worst part is the next day when it's your shift and you have to walk in there and smell it and then finish the cleanup. It's
I guess
always
that's
B
a
shift.
blessing and a curse for us. We rely on off-duty pages, so we may not to get to catch the best part of the fire, but if you're available, there's like a 90% chance that if the shift on catches a working fire, that they're going to send a request for off-duty. So at least you get to go have a little bit of fun with the other shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a thing for us. It'd be nice if it was.
It I guess it's like I said, blessing and a curse. We rely on it because we don't have the adequate staffing to not. But at the same time, from a fireman standpoint, you're like, well, B shift's catching all the fires, but at least I can hang around town and maybe go jump one with them. So for those that aren't familiar with your page on social media or anything like that, before we wrap up here, you care to let them know where they can find you, reach out, check some of your
Yeah.
products out, what you're doing for
Yeah.
the fire service?
Absolutely. If you want my personal stuff on Instagram, it's at Henline89. You can feel free to reach out to me personally too. I don't care. But if you want to check out Hasty Fire Products and my strap, that's on Instagram is where I'm most active, I guess. Um, and that's at Hasty Rescue Strap, all one word. I do post some stuff to TikTok once in a while too, but it's the same stuff I put on Instagram. Same thing, Hasty Rescue Strap. I don't get too worked up about that. Um, and then the website, if you want to check out the website, you want to buy anything, I do sell some other things. Like I got to make some more, but I make some glove clamps that help keep your gloves open. So I sell those, some t-shirts, hats, stuff like that. Basically just to help fund me making more straps. Um, that is hastyfireproducts.com. And I am currently sold out of straps. Yesterday, I sold my last one out of my inventory,
That's
and I've already
huge.
got it. Yeah, dude, it's been awesome, man. Like the support I've gotten has been really good. Was it? I guess a week before then, or 2 weeks before then, I started ordering more material to have more made, and they just started selling faster than I could get the stuff in. And then my manufacturer told me yesterday, I dropped the stuff off to them. They told me that they're backed up for 4 weeks. So um, I'm hoping to have the new straps in stock around the same time of my conference. So mid-March, they should be in stock. I have the website set up that you can still order them if you want to. Just understand that, it's going to be a few weeks before I can actually ship them out. And because of you allowing me on your podcast here, I did make a coupon code for any of your listeners, and it's Citizen. So make your purchase, whatever you want to get, go down to the tab for the coupon, type in Citizen, and I think it's free shipping. I think that's how I set it up. So you get free shipping on it. Yeah.
Over to social media too, with
And
the
then if,
tagged along with this.
thank you. It's a little bit time's running out, but there is still some space in a couple of the hands-on classes, specifically my RIT class and the forcible entry class still have a couple of spots, and then the lecture spots are also open for our conference. If anybody wants to get in on that, it's key. So
And
that's all the social
also, I
media plugs.
understand that you're sponsoring a seat for the RIT
Yeah,
class as well. So if anybody heads over to your social media,
yep,
they can get in on that and maybe get lucky and get selected to get some free quality training. Come meet some great
yep,
people.
yep. That's one of the things I've decided to do is I always want to give back. So anytime I make a little bit of money, I try to make a donation to a firefighter charity. And this time I said, instead of that, I'll just put somebody through the class. It's not an expensive conference per se. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive. But still, there's people that aren't signing up because they can't afford it. So I figured I'd buy a spot. It's on one of my posts. You just gotta comment on it, and then I'll randomly pick a winner, um, and then I'll pay for their spot as long as they can get themselves to the conference. All the training will be on me.
It's awesome. Well, y'all heard him. Make sure you go over and check out the Hasty Rescue Strap over on social media. Uh, the Key City Fire Conference. Get in on that too if you're available. Want some quality training? They got a bunch of good classes, lectures putting on. You heard it from him here first. Bunch of great guys up there in Frederick getting ready to put on some good stuff for firemen. Spread a little firemanship around for St. Patty's Day.
Hell yeah.
Make sure you tune in to the next episode and go check out all the products.